Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn, and I'm an adult child psychologist.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, Carolyn. I'd like to welcome everybody here today, especially the new people. And I hope that all of you today hear something, at least one thing, that you might go, aha, or at least remember that you're a precious child of God. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned in ACA, is that I am a precious child of God. And so I'm going to start, before, you're going to hear me talk a little bit about, actually a lot about the steps and how they have affected my life. But before I do that, I'm going to give you also a little bit of history, a little bit of my background history. It's interesting that Buzz and I both are from Texas. Yay! Yeah. Let's see. My grandparents all of my grandparents came from Germany. They migrated over in the early 1900s, and right before the war, they saw that coming, and so they migrated through Russia into Texas. And as a child, they all lived about 2 hours north of Houston, out in the country. They were both sets of them were farmers and had huge, large families. They were both Catholic, and lots of children and lots of relatives. And I was like one of the very last on both sides of those, of all the children. I was kind of like at the very end of probably like 80 grandchildren. Yeah. They're still mostly down there too. So, and one of the few that also left. They all kind of live around each other, and they stay together and stick together and still hang out together, through the years. But anyway, so I have a lot of incredibly fond memories of. My mother and my father were the only ones of their siblings to actually go down to Houston and live in Houston. My mother went to college, started to go to college, and my father was working, and then she unexpectedly got pregnant and started having a family, so she forgot about college and put it aside and started raising a family. And so as a child growing up, we went to, which I think ties into why I love Oregon so much and the Pacific Northwest in general, is because we spent a lot of time up in the country, and the moment the car door would open, I was gone. I was out in the woods. And they used to honk the horn to get us back. I mean, that's how far away we would be. Or we'd be on the horses and riding bareback and falling off of them and running into all sorts of collisions with the horses. And so I had a lot of fond memories of going up to the country. And also we did a lot of camping. So I was raised going into the hill country of Texas. If anybody here thinks that Texas is just all desert or it's all Houston, don't tell them, right? There's a beautiful area. It's called the heart of Texas, and that's where it's called the hill country, the heart of Texas, and it's a lot like Oregon. And I still to this day love going there and have some family in that area and friends. So we spent a lot of time doing both of those, camping, going to the country, and I don't have a whole lot of memories early on other than those two things, because there's a lot of blankness. And I think slowly but surely in working the steps, some of that starts coming back. But around in 6th grade, I had a 6th grade teacher, and I had some situations that occurred. My father was the alcoholic in the family, and he started using, or he was actually using quite a bit by that time. Still, we looked really nice. We had a very, what appeared to be a real functional family. The house we were German, so the Germans, are kind of tidy and organized and that sort of thing. And we looked that way, and we appeared that way. Inside, not a lot was going on. There was a lot of anger, a lot of not talking, a lot of just keeping it inside. But you could feel the energy in the room. And every now and then we'd have one of these huge explosions, and which would kind of throw a person off. And being the youngest, I didn't understand a lot of that. And all my siblings were a lot older than I was. So they were teenagers when I was kind of like, in my 7, 8, and 9. So they were 4 teenagers all at once. Yeah. So that was a time when, around 12 years old, let me keep track of my time here. My father lost his job. I'm not sure exactly, what that pertained to, but his job, he was in construction, and he lost his job, and my mother had to go to work. And I was young. I hadn't experienced, really, my father really had I had absolutely, and I'm not exaggerating, no connection with my father at all. I do remember one time he spanked me, but that's the only physical contact I had ever remembered. And later on, come to find out, I tried to make a couple attempts to give him a hug, and he pushed me away. This was right before he died. So I'm laying down a foundation here because some of this is what I learned in working through the steps, how it has impacted my decision making and where I went in my life today. So at that time, also, my sister, who was 16, got pregnant. Exactly the same year. She got pregnant and left and got married. My middle sister, she decided to take off and move because everybody else was taking off, because my oldest brother had gone to Germany for training, and he was stationed over there. And then my oldest sister got married. And so everybody, in 6th grade, my teacher died, who I was very, very close to. And I felt like I got a lot of attention out of school, hence why I've been in school all my life, and I still am. It is a part of the pattern. And so I got a lot of attention. My teachers would recognize me for a lot of things that I couldn't see in myself, and I didn't get a lot of recognition. I was the lost child, in the family disease of addiction, where you have the hero, the scapegoat, the clown, the lost child. I was the lost child. And so I kind of went to my room and kind of studied, and I got the kudos from the classroom, so I went in there and did a lot of homework and studying, and got a lot of recognition for that. So when my teacher died in 6th grade, it was pretty devastating to me, and it was a male person. And then, so my siblings all left, my mother went to work, and there I was with my alcoholic father. It was petrifying for me. And the thing that really stood out for me was they talked a lot about me being a mistake. I was the 5th child, and they weren't planning on me. And if they were going to have another child, well, they wanted a male person because there was only one male person in the family, one child male person. And so I heard a lot about that, heard a lot about the mailman, and my parents weren't that way. They were very solid together, even though they fought and argued. But there was a lot of joking about that growing up. And I'd meet a boyfriend or something. There was a lot of joking about that, and you're going to take off with him, or you're going to marry him. Well, I met somebody at 15 years old. Shortly after my first boyfriend died of heroin addiction, I met a gentleman who was his friend. His name was Paul, and he and I came up with this great idea. We were going to run away and get married. So I wrote a letter to my parents. Week after I turned 16, I said, thank you very much for everything. I'm going to release you of your responsibility, and I'm going to take off. I'm going to go get married. Little did I know that you can't get married unless you go to Mexico, and we went north. We got into Colorado, and I said, hello. I'm in Colorado, and would you sign the marriage papers? Well, I was shocked. Looking back, I had started smoking marijuana at that time. I was absolutely shocked that my mother was furious with me. I thought, well, they didn't want me. I wasn't supposed to be there. If I was supposed to be male. So what's your problem? And as soon as I left the house, then they were going to go move back up to the country. My father was going to build a house. So I thought, well, I was doing them a favor. Little did I know they were pissed. And so when I came back, in my heart, all I really wanted was them to love me. I just wanted to know that they cared and that I was important to them. But my father signed the papers, and I went off and married a heroin addict. And I spent the next 5 years living in that kind of scenario. A lot of drugs going in and out of the house. I also began experimenting more. I also went to my first Al-Anon meeting when I was 16 years old, which I didn't know until I looked back. That's before we talked about treatment. And so I went to that there. He continued to use. Surprise. And no matter what I did, I could not control his behavior. Finally, after the second time, he OD'd, overdosed from heroin. I was sitting in the ambulance with him going down to the hospital. He was in treatment one more time. I thought, that's it. I'm done. I'm leaving. Called my father up. I moved back in with my family. My father said, I'm so glad that you decided to come back home. If you want to go back to school, I had already started college, but if you want to go back to school, I'll pay for half of it. I said, that sounds like a plan to me. And they had built a home. My father actually built it with the family. All the family members came and brought this house together, and they were already settled out there. And so I went back, and one night I went to bed. He came home late, and he'd been drinking. He worked till like midnight. He was working on this big construction project on 1960 in Houston. And I dreamt that he died. And about 5:30 that morning, I woke up, and my mother was standing over me. I looked at her, and I said, he's dead. She said, yes, he's dead. Wow. So it was pretty impactful for me. Once again, I felt like I had some kind of responsibility in that. I had stayed up with him. I cooked him dinner, and he said, "Oh, go to bed. I'll get to bed. I'll wake up before you do anyway. And I'll clean up the kitchen." And we had this little argument. So I went to bed, and lo and behold, he was dead. Mm-hmm. So that threw me into a tailspin. I ended up finding another person to get married to. That was the father of my children. We ended up spending about 7 years on a coke run, traveling all over the United States. We eventually came to Boise, where we settled down. I began noticing my behavior was that of my parents, which you heard earlier about some of that I was doing the things that I never dreamt that I would be doing. And it was beginning to affect my kids. And I couldn't stand to think that. My father would always say, don't drink, don't do drugs, and yet he did, and I didn't want to be one of those parents. And so one night I called my father-in-law up, and I was very close to him. I kind of adopted him as my father. And this part of it, I tell my story because a lot of times in 12-step programs we don't, and there's a lot of conversation that comes up about whether we can have any control over another person using or not using. Well, what my father-in-law did is he asked me if I would go to an AA meeting. And I said, I'm already going to Al-Anon. He said, but would you go to an AA meeting for me? And I said, yes. And that was the next day I went, and went to AA. And I'll have 26 years next month. Mm-hmm. So what that taught me is I really trusted him, and I loved him deeply, and I did hear him. And I try to remember that today because I work in the field, and I try to remember that sometimes, that can work. And a lot of times people ask me, what can they do? The kids will ask me, what can I do about my parents? And so we don't know. I don't know when we're going to get in recovery or not, or who will and won't. But anyway, I was grateful that he had taken that opportunity to ask me to go, because it changed my life. I got very, very, very involved in AA. And worked the steps many, many times, sponsored many people, did all sorts of service work. Changed my life, absolutely. My husband left that day I got into AA. He left. And, come to find out, I told him to leave. I used to think it was he left. My daughter actually one day said, well, Mom, you always say in these AA meetings that, he left. Well, remember, you asked him to leave? Like, wow, one of those, wow. Yeah. It's kind of embarrassing after you say that for 10 years, It's not the truth. So I worked really hard on my recovery there. I was pretty much a mess because I had used for 7 years every day, nonstop. And little did I know that he was dealing at the time and keeping us both afloat with drugs. So I did go back to school, as was read in my bio. By the grace of God, one miracle after another transpired in my life, and I could write a book on all the miracles that happened during that time. About 14 years into it, as I was contemplating moving over to this area. I was involved in a relationship. I had done everything the way they told me to do it, like don't get involved in a relationship, until you've been clean and sober for a year. So I didn't do that. Met a really nice young man who was clean and sober, and was involved with him, and then that ended, and then there would be another one, and then that would end, and then there would be another, and that would end. I was began seeing somewhat of a serial monogamous relationship situation going on here. And one of my sponsors said, "It's really interesting, Carolyn. Your life, is amazing. What's happened to you in your life, and how you turn things around by coming to AA and working the steps and having this faith and trusting God and your spiritual path. Except this one area." And I was like, I thought, yeah, that's true, but oh well, So I got involved in another relationship, one more, and that ended. And my sister, I was talking to my sister one day, who had actually gotten in recovery around the same time as I did. And she said, I was telling her about, she's like, I said, do you remember anything about Daddy, any nice things? Well, silly me, I asked his favorite child. They were like this, well, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, I was forgotten. My grandparents didn't know who I was. My parent, I was like the last. So, I just didn't get it, and I was like, really? And she's like, yeah. She said, well, why don't you, I know there must be wonderful things, so think about it and think about, pray about it, about, God to bring that realization to you. So I did that. So I had this memory, and the memory was right before my father died, I'd drive out to their house out in the country, and I'd leave, and I'd drive out there the next weekend, because we all would get together every weekend, Every time I'd leave, I would smell gardenias or something sweet at that time. I didn't know what they were, and every time I think, wow, that's weird. It's just weird. You get in the car and you leave, and every time it's on the weekend. So one weekend, I was out there and I was, cleaning my car with a fine-tooth comb. And I get in all the crevices, with Q-tips and everything, cleaning all the crevices. And it was under the seat, and I had the hose of the vacuum cleaner, and it went, and I pulled it out, and there's all these dead gardenias. And I was like, what? And I stood there for a minute, and I gathered them all. I had something like this, and I gathered them all, and I walked to my dad. This is in the later stage addiction, he was beginning to talk to himself, and he wasn't thinking clearly, and he was angry 24/7, and he was, and there wasn't any physical violence. There was just no presence there at all, and his eyes were totally glazed over all the time. So I walked to him, and I had these, and I said, "Do you have any idea where these came from?" And this big smile came on his face. And I knew then, I knew, and this is, 15 years ago, many, many years after he died, I knew that was his way of loving me. And that's his way to show his love and affection, the best that he could do. And that was when I first began realizing that part of this may not be about me. It may have been about him, but I didn't understand quite yet. I called my mother about a year later. I said, I'm going to come down. I want to grab some, I want you to show me where he's died and where he's buried it, because I hadn't gone back for 25 years. And she's like, I'd be happy to go with you. I went down to Houston, got her in the car. I said, oh, I want to take some gardenias to the gravesite. And she said, oh, Carolyn, it's way too late for that. And I said, oh, can we just go try? My mother and my sister had traded houses, because when my father died, the house was too much acreage and everything. So we drove over to my sister's house. And we're driving up, and my sister is out by the gardenia bush. And we're driving in the driveway, and she comes over like this. And she comes up to the car window, and I said, you got to be kidding. And she said, what? And she's like, you're right. This is ridiculous. He said, it's too late in the year for gardenias. And I said, well, I was coming over here to see if there were any gardenias. Mother insisted there weren't any. You're telling me it's too late. I said, I wanted to take some out to Daddy, to the gravesite. I haven't been there for all these years. And she's like, wow, okay. You can have them all if you want. So we went out. And I think that was a time when I really began understanding, some of the depth that the woundedness that I had been experiencing, but I still didn't quite grasp it. I was started to go to Al-Anon. I moved over to Portland, got very involved in Al-Anon. By the grace of God, it was extremely painful going through the steps, and one more program. I was not happy about that. I did not want to add one more program, and besides that, we have way more fun in AA. But it was like I was in enough pain that I was willing to do anything, and so I did it. And I got a great sponsor, and she was very familiar with AA and working the steps in a very, very deep way, and so I followed that. And got really involved and got involved with a man, and I thought this could be it. In fact, this person actually lived out in the country. Turns out he lived like in a place almost identical to the old homestead in Texas. We did a lot of country western dancing. We did a lot of gardening, which is very close to my heart, which is part of my culture. I really think today that this was God's way to bring it all to fruition for me. Like, it was like stepping into my past, and he was so much like my dad. Like, I had never been in any of these relationships I've been in. None of them were like my dad. So he was, and we broke up for the third time, which was a new experience for me because I would just break up and say, hey, I'm out of here. So, but I thought, you know what, I keep running. My pattern was to run. When I was 16, I ran. I started using drugs, I ran. I left Houston, I ran. I kept doing all of this running and running and running, and I didn't understand all the tie-in at that time. So I just knew that I needed to stay, and so I did. And despite the fact that I was, working a really strong program and had a sponsor and going to meetings, we ended up breaking up, and I went into shock. Like the bottom fell out. I went into an emotional tailspin. People had begun recognizing it over here, how I would go and do that, and started bringing it up. I didn't understand. It's like, okay, but what do I do? I don't know. I get in these relationships. I think they're healthy. I'm practicing a program. I don't know what else to do. It's got to be a God thing. And so we broke up. I decided to go down to Houston and spend an extended period of time down there, and I was trying to get to an Al-Anon meeting. One thing that I recognized out of that relationship is that I kept reacting, even though I intellectually knew better, and the situations I knew were not necessarily about me, the way I was looking at them, that they were about me. I didn't understand how I could do something different. I didn't get it because I didn't really know what to do different. And so I went down to Houston. I was getting myself to an Al-Anon meeting, and I walked in. This is where my divine intervention took place, because I walked in the meeting, and there was a couple of gentlemen standing over at the side, and I said, I'm trying to find the Al-Anon meeting. I was new. I hadn't gone to a lot of meetings out there. And he said, one of the gentlemen said, well, just go to that meeting right there. And I said, is it an Al-Anon meeting? Well, I don't know. We don't know. And the other guy said, well, I don't know. Does it matter? Yes, it does matter. Well, just come to the AA meeting with us. I said, I don't want to go to an AA meeting. I want to go to an Al-Anon meeting. They're like, look, lady, just get Tony. And I'm thinking, I know, that's what I'm trying to do. I need a meeting. I'm down with my family and broken up with a boyfriend, and I'm devastated, and the void and the head and the heart's just all over the place, and I'm a mess. And so I walk in the meeting, and they've got this book open. I'm like, what is that? And they're reading out of it, and they're reading about reacting. And I thought, you've got to be kidding. There was one thing I took from that relationship that I knew. I didn't understand the depth of it and the connection, but I knew that I was reacting no matter what I was doing. in these situations that I didn't have to react to, but it was triggering something deep and dark in me, and I couldn't pull it up. And so they read on and on and on, and I walked out of there, and I was like, oh my gosh, one more program. Oh, it's like, no, I'm tired of working the steps. I don't want to anymore. No. So I came back to Portland, and I thought, okay, I got to find ACA, and where can I find it? And I looked, and I really, they were too far away. One was out in Gresham that I saw. One was 10 miles away, northwest over here. Oh my God. And I was like, that's too much. I want something convenient. And and so I was at some other meeting, and I don't even remember which one it was, but somebody, maybe it was Buzz, announcing it, but in Vancouver meeting. And I thought, all right, I can handle that. So I went to Vancouver, and they had this book, and they had that book. And they were beginning to work to do the step studies. So I was like, wow. And so I got the book and the workbook really quick, and like it came in speed time. Like I think they must have speed deliver it to me. This girl needs help. And so we started the step study, and I was absolutely blown away from the very beginning. Like I can't even. Really, like I haven't shared my ACA story to this point, and this is the first time I really have shared it kind of from beginning to end or component of it. And it's hard to put into words the awarenesses and the ahas that I have experienced in this program. It's so impactful for me. It has been just amazing. But as I started working the first step, what I realized is that I was powerless over this situation. There was a tiny little bit of me that thought maybe I could surrender whatever this was that I didn't understand about my pattern in relationships and my running away, that maybe, just maybe there was a God in my life that could help show me the way. And I started surrendering ever so little bit, and it took a lot of prayer on my part, and it didn't come easy. I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. And once I did that, I also treated that with honor and respect, because I knew once I made that decision that getting into these habit patterns that I had been using, the negativity, what I was going to find out to be abandonment and neglect of myself, that it was going to take God in order to go through this. And so I did end up in the fourth step, and for probably absolutely the first time ever, I became aware of the PTSD that I had experienced from several violent episodes in my family history, one of which actually came to fruition while I was in the fourth step. I had this awareness around this one time when my father, there was some noise outside. It was late at night, 10, 11 o'clock at night. It was late at night. And the next thing I know, I'm like 6 years old. And there's all this commotion, and my father's screaming, and he gets his rifle. Remember, we're in Texas. And tells my brother, who's 18 years old, get your rifle. And they're storming out of the house and into the front yard, and they've got some guy cornered underneath the car that's backed up against the bedroom window, because my brother would always do that because he wanted to keep the family safe because the bedroom window was down. Well, this guy was underneath the car, and they're like swearing and screaming and we're going to blow your head off, and so that had been a very traumatic experience for me, and this had played out in my life many times through the past years around my own experiences with guns. And so I'm in my fourth step in ACA. I go down to Houston one more time. I love going down to Houston. It's like, God, I have to quit going down there. These events happen. But I truly do love going down there. Before that, I called my sister and I said, help me remember this event. I don't remember all the details. I'm writing my fourth step for this ACA 12-step work. And she went over through the events, and I kind of got it clear. We had two different kind of recognitions of it, and we talked it out. So I just let it go, and I finished writing out my 4-step, went down to Houston. My brother picked me up at the airport, and we went out to dinner. And he says, "Oh yeah, remember when? Do you even remember? Were you even born when this event happened? That Daddy, there was this guy out in the front yard, and he made me go get the gun and the rifles, and we got up there, and he was underneath the cart." And I was like, "Did you talk to June?" And he's like, "No, what are you talking about?" He's like, "Man, that was like the most eventful experience that I ever remember in our childhood. That there was so much, drama and trauma around that." I was like, "Oh my gosh!" At that point, I realized that it wasn't just me that was affected by this. I wasn't just. I was internalizing all of these experiences that I was having. Many other ones. My whole family, my brothers and my sisters, had also been affected by this. And so I went through my 4-step. The 5th step. So I shared the 5th step, and which was a very humbling experience with a sponsor, and also in this group, which I might add had many, many, many rewards in doing it. We had several men and several women in this group. We ended up splitting off when we went into our sexual inventories, but we actually sat together, and I cannot tell you how enlightening it was to hear a man's perspective on situations that I had only looked at it from my female perspective. And so this began opening my eyes of a different way of looking and how men respond and react to certain situations may be different and are just individuals in general. And so I came to the 6th step in which I started looking at my character defects. And this is when I realized that I had been in a comfort zone of depression, neglect, abandonment, and abuse for all these years. What I realized is that my family had quit doing that to me for years. I continued to do it to myself. That was really sad for me. I think I'm still grieving that loss of what I did to me. As a series of events, after my childhood, that I continued making these choices based on I was unworthy, I was not lovable, I was not important. Even though I won all of these awards, I'd done all, the first person to go to college, not only a bachelor's degree, but a master's degree and certifications, and one most likely to succeed, not once, but twice by the whole school. I have no value. And again, I made that connection with school, so I was getting that, but there was still that emptiness, that void that I kept returning to. And I realized that I filled that up in ways that were unhealthy for me. And it was in the 6th and 7th step that I began realizing, and in the 8th and the 9th, as I started practicing that different behavior, is filling that void with God. So that's where the steps left me in the amends. I had other amends to make. A lot of my relationships with my children started showing up. I have a daughter who's 32 and a son that's 33, and they were raised in an alcoholic family. And so I began seeing, as I've been working through the steps, seeing how our relationships, tie in together, and how I've been behaving and how they behave, and what I can do differently. So I began realizing in the 9th step that, in the 10th step, that I needed to start focusing in on my connection with God and my dependence upon God, and that took a lot of prayer and a lot of effort. I realized, I thought, well, okay, I'm ready. Remove it, okay, I want it, and I want it now. And it doesn't happen that way for me. It's one of those experiences where it takes a period of time to go through, and it's progress, not perfection. It's one day at a time. And as I continue to remind myself, and I practice, and I read, and I go to step meetings, and I work with my sponsor, that I am able to turn this behavior around. And as a result of that, I'm able to feel like I have gone from hurting to helping, and it's been really powerful for me. And I'm very grateful for that. The thing that's really stood out for me and has given me a lot of hope is the fact that I can become aware today, and that I don't have to just jump right on into action. So the idea for me is become aware, accept it, and that's the component for me is of the feelings that are in there. And then I can go into some action. But what I did was I would jump from awareness, oh my gosh, I have all this going on, okay, action, and I was good at action, and just like I would just plunge into it, jump into it, and I forgot to feel what it was going on with me and how to self-parent myself, how to love myself, how to nurture myself, how to get this emotional support that I needed. I was taught not to feel, to talk, or to trust. I had stuffed all of that for many, many years. There was one point in my early 20s where I had quit talking altogether, literally for a year and a half. That was shortly after my whole family had disowned me for a year and a half because I ran away and got married, and I was the problem. It was my fault. Looking back on that, there's been a lot of healing. It's amazing that I get to work with teenagers that are from alcoholic families. I sometimes I'm just almost in disbelief what God has done for me in my life. To work day in and day out for the past 12 years directly with teenagers. And because as I become aware that I am a valuable human being worthy of love and affection, and I can accept myself for who I am, all that the past and all my decisions, and the fact that even though my family quit doing this behavior, and in fact what I really learned is my family's changed a lot. I was the one that was stuck in those early years. I don't know what they were doing, but when I go down there, they treat me like I'm a gem, like I'm a jewel. I have learned to set a lot of boundaries with them now. I am an adult, and because of my foundation in this program, I think that they respect me in ways that they never did before. But I've also been making healthy choices for myself, healthier choices, because I do practice that awareness and acceptance and action. So, in making and becoming aware and accepting, I think what happens for me is that I unblock like possibilities that are out there that I cannot see when I'm in anger or fear or resentment, or moving from just my force as opposed to God's divine direction. So I'm learning to slow down. Just slow down a little bit more and slow down a little bit more. And in doing that, I'm beginning to feel like my relationship with God is developing a closer relationship, and that void that I talked about earlier, that I filled in so many different ways, is being filled with a higher power, my higher power, and not anybody else's. And it's one thing I absolutely love about this program that I had started practicing actually a number of years ago is the fellow travelers. I'm one of those adult children who I follow directions really well, and I'll do it your way, even though it doesn't serve me well. And I had a lot of sponsors like that, and bless her heart, I learned, and actually one of my last ones was that way, and bless her heart, I did follow through, and that's when another big boom for me, aha, was like, whoa, she may be able to get away with that kind of behavior, I cannot. Because it's not my type, it's not my personality, and when I act aggressively, I just get slapped. I mean, it's like it's not who I am, and so I act out of character when I do that. And so I have learned that it's maybe not right or wrong or good or bad. I've learned that there is a lot of gray area in there. It's that I need to honor myself and my feelings, and then talk that out with somebody. And as a result of doing that, that I am able to learn more from my own mistakes and my own choices. So recently, I've been considering moving down to Houston, and just to kind of tie the story together and pull this together, is I've been thinking about moving back down, and so I went down there last year in the summertime, and my family's like, okay, all right, so you can live here. You can either live here or you can live here, and don't worry about a job. That'll all work out. And now you got your yoga all set up, and we've got all the things that you need down here, and you've established that, and everything's going to be fine. So we're going to help you move. Everybody's going to come up here and help me move. They're going to pack me, and they're going to move me down. And I was like, really? Yeah. I wanted to get so angry. That's why I left. That's why I didn't return. And that's why I wasn't ready to return until now. And whether it happens or not, I don't know. It's in God's hands. But I was like, I wanted to get so mad at them, and I thought, doggone it, there you guys go again. I'm not going to come down here because you're always trying to control me. I'm the youngest kid, and you're on my parents, and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, okay, awareness, acceptance, lots of feelings. What do I want to do about this? And wow. I went to them. We always have this little gathering before I leave, family gathering to say goodbye, last dinner together. And I said, you know what, you guys, I love you so much. Thank you so much for being there for me and for all that you have done for me. I truly and deeply appreciate it. And I have a career, and I have friends, and I have program friends, and I have a community that I absolutely love. And I just don't see myself doing that. I might, over a period of time, come back down there, but I will do that, basically, in my time and really on God's time. And so, it's not that they haven't tried a couple of times to stick it in there, which is fine. That's okay. It's your privilege. I don't have to get angry about it anymore. And I think that really sums it up for me. It's like what I find is that I don't have to get angry when I'm taking care of myself. And that's another huge part of this program that it has taught me is I do not have to get angry. That I can honor and respect myself. And as a result of honoring and respect, forgiving myself, first of all, for past behavior, and accepting and honoring myself, that I can forgive other people and honor and respect them and have some compassion for them also. And my compassion has deepened to a place that I didn't know was possible. So I have a long way to go, but it is getting better. So I'd like to leave you with I cannot remember where I read this ACA Serenity Prayer, but I absolutely love it. It's really, I think, maybe it's not even there. I don't know. I swear I read it in the book, and maybe someone can tell me afterwards. The Serenity Prayer goes like this. God, grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the person I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you so much.